Hi, I'm Mel and welcome to Thriver TV, the place to break free from narcissistic abuse with quantum tools and understandings. And today's episode is about how do we help our children that have been affected by narcissistic abuse. And this is a question I get asked nearly every day. And this has always been the case because naturally concerned parents are very worried about their kids. And I just, Look, because of that and because that's been the question for years, I created an article series and a radio blog series, and the details of that are underneath this video, and I really want you to connect to that and listen to it and watch it because that will help you a lot. But I'm going to talk about this topic today as well. And I want to start off with this understanding that the most damaging thing that can happen to our children is to have a narcissistic parent and a victimized toxic parent, because both parents are incredibly absent and unavailable emotionally. And with all of the work that I've done with wounded adults, wounded children in adult bodies, which is hundreds of people over the last 8 years, the most damaged people I've ever seen have come from that dynamic. And what a lot of victimized parents don't realize is that in that victimized state, they're over-involved in controlling and toxic ways, and it pushes children away, and it really significantly runs the risk of that child being alienated from them by the narcissist. So as parents that have gone through narcissistic abuse, we really have to understand that it is our greatest mission for ourselves and for our children to heal our traumas and to be able to come out of this in an up-level way in order to be able to be healthy for our children, because we can't fix or heal our children if we haven't healed ourselves. We can't lead where we haven't gone ourselves. And this is, one of the biggest issues that parents face is that they're not doing this. Now, narcissistic abuse teaches us a very, very important fact about life, is that nothing that we try to create from negative emotion works. And if we think about anything in our life, that when we've come at it from a place of trauma or panic, fear, pain, dishevelment, that whatever we're trying to do doesn't work. And this is from the most simplest thing to the most important thing, which is trying to help our children. And over the years, parents have really had a go at me when I've said emotion first, that there is no amount of doing that we can do that can make up for a distraught, fractured beingness. It's not going to work. And my Thriver philosophy is so much about emotion first. We've got to deal with and up-level our emotions to be able to have any sort of positive impact on our children or anything that we're trying to do. And parents have got really, upset about this, and they've said, you're just talking some new age woohoo. You want me to not care about my kids. How can I not care? You don't care. I really want you to understand, I am so passionate about this topic, about healing for our children so that they can be more empowered, they can be more integrated, and their future generations can be more integrated and whole and empowered, rather than this incredible epidemic of what's happening with people that are not self-partnered and abused and abused. And coming out of that dynamic is narcissists or codependents that are going to be abused by narcissists. So the buck's got to stop here. And it needs to be with ourselves. And narcissistic abuse teaches us that we are a creator, and we're creating through emotion, energy in motion. So that means that we've got to tend to emotion first to be able to show up in the field. And it is a quantum field, everything's connected, in a way that's going to change the results. Because if we're coming from trauma and we're coming from a disintegrated rather than integrated being, well, then we're going to get more disintegration in the results on that topic that we're feeling disintegrated about, which is our children. And I want to share with you this story. It's my personal story, and it's a story about myself and my son. And as you know, I went through narcissistic abuse, and he went through it. It was his stepfather, but he saw it all. He was privy to it, and it was, you know, really quite horrendous and traumatic. And what was incredibly traumatic, obviously, was he didn't know whether his mother was going to live or die, or whether I was going to make it. And, you know, it was a terrible time for him. He was also alienated against me at times and manipulated by the narcissist and all sorts of things, all the normal sorts of things. Now, when I started getting better, when I'd done enough work on myself that I got solid and I was out of the danger zone, that's when my son fell apart. And he was 19 at the time, and it had been going on for about a year that he'd been depressed. He was getting too involved in drugs and alcohol. He was hanging out with the wrong crowd, and it was getting worse and worse and worse. And it became every parent's nightmare. He dropped out of uni, had no direction. He was so depressed. He was barely looking after his basic needs. He was computer game addicted, going nowhere. And I knew he was this talented, incredible, beautiful kid, young man, that was just completely going down the drain. So I did what every parent would do. I was prescribing, I was lecturing, I was trying to fix, I was trying to guilt him, I was trying to encourage him, I was trying to support him, I was trying to, you know, I was doing everything and anything that I could to try and help him get better. And my focus, of course, was like, what is happening to my son? You know, he's falling apart, he's ruining himself, he's killing himself. You know, that's what my focus was. And it was just terrible. And then with the substance abuse, he ended up getting abusive on the come downs. There was all sorts of stuff happening, and it got to a point where, to honour myself, because I wasn't going to be abused again, I had to kick him out of the house. And it was one of the hardest things that I've ever had to do. And when I did that, and he was leaving that day, he looked me straight in the eyes and he said, "Mum, I'm never going to lay eyes on you again unless it's on your deathbed or on my deathbed." And it just went through me like shards of glass when he said that. I was just devastated, and I thought I'd failed as a mother, and, you know, it's like I've come all the way through narcissistic abuse and now this has happened. You know, it was just terrible. And but I knew enough about my own recovery, and I knew enough about, I'd woken up to the fact that he wasn't getting better because he still had the roof over his head. He could still have meals. He could, you know, he could still survive, and I was enabling him to stay the way he was. He didn't have to survive himself. So I threw him out, and he went, and it was awful. And then, coincidentally not, I was watching Esther Hicks and Law of Attraction DVDs to just try and help. And one night, a couple of nights later, I was watching one of them, and it just happened to be Esther talking to this woman about teenage children and how it was so important to stop seeing them and vibrating emotionally as them being ruined and never going to make it and just terrible, and to up-level our emotional vibration and our belief systems into knowing that they were doing a personal evolution journey, that they had an inner wisdom that would awaken and would show them the way, and they would get through this, and to let go and to work on knowing that and vibrating at that level. So it really struck a chord with me. I know I'd already worked on myself with Quantum Freedom Healing so much to sort out my own emotional vibration after all of the violations and abuse and traumas of narcissistic abuse, and cleaning up my past that had got me in there in the first place. So I knew how all of that worked, but I'd never put two and two together to think, well, I can work on this in regard to my son. So I did it. And that night I got started, and I did it every single day. And what I would do is I would pick up all of the traumas in my body, which was all of the fear and the concern about him. I let it go. And what I brought in was the source understanding of he will find his way. He has got infinite wisdom. This is all a perfect journey of evolution for him. And I see and feel and vibrate with him at that level. And I was so diligent with it, I broke through. And I absolutely felt it in my body as real. And it wasn't long after that, it took about 3 weeks. It wasn't long after that he texted me out of the blue and he said, "Mum, I want to meet with you for lunch. Let's meet somewhere." And we met, and as soon as I saw him, I knew something was really different. And he came up and he gave me the biggest hug, and he's like, "Mum, thank you so much for what you did, and thank you so much for kicking me out." And he's like, "You know, I've got rid of the drugs, I've got rid of those people in my life." And he's like, "You know, I understand. And the best thing you did was what you did." And he never looked back. He never looked back. Now, I know that wasn't a coincidence. That was an unprecedented breakthrough. I'd been trying everything for a year, everything. That took 3 weeks. And it was so powerful what I was doing that it was such a complete release and let go, and then vibrating at, this is all happening for a reason and this is all going to be perfect. It was even to the point of surrender of, I adored him beyond measure, but it was like, well, if he needs to step out of this lifetime, if that's really his path, that's what he needs to do. That's how powerful my surrender was. And of course, that would have been horrendous beyond measure. But I'd let go, and I felt him at a different level. And Zach works full time for me with MTE. A lot of you would already know that. And he is amazing. He's one of the most amazing people on this planet. And that day when we had lunch, I knew my son was back. But more than that, I actually knew that he was a more evolved, up-leveled version of himself than what he'd been even before he went through what he did. And I know now today that, you know, his heart, his passions, his belief, his wisdom is so much because of this journey that he's been on. And it's just been the most incredible gift. It really has. So I want you to understand that I'm not saying don't take action. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is do not try to take action from a place of trauma in your body and in your emotions and your vibration. Because when we do that, narcissists come out trumps every single time. If you're co-parenting or any situation, could be a situation like mine when it's said and done, or it could be a situation when you're right in the throes of it, and you're right in all of the co-parenting and even custody battles and the most awful stuff. You know, this I have seen every single time, is that number one, when parents are doing the work in their own body on their own traumas, that already has an effect on their kids. And number two, if when we get the terror and the pain and the fear out of our emotional resonance about our children, and we start feeling and seeing them a different way, they rise up into that. And I've seen it happen every single time. And what I've also seen is that the parents who don't do the work on themselves, who stay as victims, who try to sort out their kids and stop the narcissist seeing them, and all the things, all the drama and the trauma and the victimization that goes on, it is the most terrible combination for your children. And I really urge you to stop doing it. And I promise you, the people that I've worked on in the that you know, when they've become adults, quite often their biggest traumas, their biggest emotional agonies are about the victimized parent, not even the narcissist. I promise you. So, you know, I really want this to be a wake-up call, and I really wanted to share my story so that I can inspire parents to lead the way here, because our children need us to do this, to stop these cycles and break these patterns. So I hope that that's really helped you get serious about this. And if you like my videos, I would love you to subscribe to my channel and like and comment. And also too, if you haven't already, you can get connected with my free resources that are really going to help you. So you can do that by clicking the button that appears on this video. And I would love you, every parent out there that is so struggling with your children and you fear about them, please come into my next webinar group. We've only just started workshopping, and the breakthroughs and the results in there are absolutely incredible. Once you realize how to actually get into your body and work at an emotional, vibrational level with your healing, you have a direct path to heal. And that not only heals you, that heals your children as well. So, alrighty, so to the next video. That's it from me, everybody, and lots of love, and bye-bye.